this is a Fox News alert. A judge has sentenced former Chicago police officer Jason Van Dyke to 6 years and 9 months in prison, 2 years mandatory for the shooting death of black teenager LaQuan McDonald. You'll remember that was back in 2014. Van Dyke was convicted of second-degree murder and 16 counts of aggravated battery, one for each bullet he put into McDonald in 2014. Again, nearly 7 years is his sentence just in.
Here today, and you've seen the impact that this sentence, this crime has had on LaQuan McDonald and his family. You've seen the impact on the Van Dykes and their family, and the children. That's the shame. The family are suffering a tremendous amount of pain during this, along with LaQuan McDonald's family and loved ones. And I've sat here time and time again, and along with my brother judges that are here in this courtroom, and it's just so senseless that these acts occur, because you can see the pain on both sides of the family. And I think Mr. McMahon said it in closing arguments in the case in chief. This is a tragedy for both sides. So this is not easy, and I don't expect it to be easy. My findings are an appropriate sentence would be 81 months in the Illinois Department of Corrections, 2 years mandatory supervised release. Mr. Van Dyke.
Well, we're following the sentencing of former Chicago police officer Jason Van Dyke. Officer Van Dyke was convicted of second-degree murder and 16 counts of aggravated battery after shooting and killing LaQuan McDonald in 2014. The prosecution was calling witnesses to testify against Van Dyke earlier. The defense is expected to cross-examine each witness next. Well, Charlene Carruthers is a community organizer and founding national director of Black Youth Project 100. She joins me now from Chicago. So, Charlene, a sentence has not been handed down yet, but some activists are worried that he could get a light sentence. What would you like to see?
Well, in this particular moment, I'm thinking about the many days we spent on the streets protesting in order for this story to even be heard. I'm thinking about William Calloway, and primarily I'm thinking about LaQuan McDonald and his family, and how nothing that the court says today will be complete justice. At the same time, I'm clear that whatever decision comes out of the court today will impact our communities and send a message to the Chicago Police Department and send a message to everyday people about how they value black people's lives and whether or not they believe that anyone should be held accountable. In this case, Jason Van Dyke should be held accountable for killing LaQuan McDonald. And it's painful, and I'm actually heartbroken listening to the people right now who are testifying how they have experienced Officer Van Dyke in the past.
This particular case, I know, has been a big deal for you and the community in particular. No matter what comes down today, where do you go from here?
Well, we double down on the organizing work that black people in Chicago have been doing for decades, unfortunately, because we've had to, due to various systems of oppression, be it white supremacy, or very specifically the Chicago Police Department, that to this day still receives nearly 40% of our public service budget. And so we're continuing to fight for divestments from the Chicago Police Department and investments in our communities. We're continuing to fight for the reopening of mental health facilities. We're continuing to fight for full funding for Chicago public schools. That work continues, and we know that there are people who don't agree with the work that we do, and I'm one of the people in the broader organizing community that are pleased that Mayor Rahm Emanuel isn't running for re-election and are poised to hold the next mayor of Chicago accountable and say this can happen no more cover-ups, and no more corruption out of the Chicago Police Department.
You know, on Thursday, a judge acquitted 3 Chicago police officers who were accused of falsifying reports over the shooting. I'm curious what your reaction was to that.
My goodness. When I learned of that decision from the court, to me it was more of the same, right? What I understand is that even finding Officer Van Dyke guilty of anything, of second-degree murder and aggravated assault, that in and of itself was a crack in the blue wall, and that blue wall is still very much so fortified by the Fraternal Order of Police. It's fortified by people who elected officials and other interests that support the Chicago Police Department, and that it's more of the same. And frankly, I'm not surprised that they were acquitted of all charges.
So when you talk about trust that needs to be built between law enforcement and the people on the ground there, How do you make a difference and change that relationship so both sides trust each other?
Well, you know, this is fundamentally an issue of power. And it's absurd. The amount of power the Chicago Police Department has over our lives is absolutely absurd. And what needs to happen is that there needs to be a complete shift in power. That means actually passing policy similar to or exactly as the CPAC, the Community Police Accountability Council, or other civilian accountability councils that can actually have the power to subpoena officers and the Chicago Police Department, budgetary power, hiring and firing power. We actually have to shift power in Chicago, or it's just going to be more of the same. And so to tell a community to trust a group of people who have weapons, who have seemingly unlimited power, is to not recognize that our community does not have the same amount of power or even state-backed support or authority as the Chicago Police Department has. And so until we continue to focus on a conversation that is fundamentally about shifting power, trust cannot happen.
So when you talk to the Chicago Police Department, what is one thing that they can do moving forward that could really make a difference in the community?
Well, one, they can scale back on forces and take less of the money from our budget in Chicago because, frankly, the Chicago Police Department, I live in Chicago. I live on the south side of Chicago. I was born and raised here, and I've never felt that the Chicago Police Department keeps me safe. I feel safe when we have quality public schools, when we have quality health care, when we have access to good jobs, right, that allow us to maintain our dignity. And so they can make a commitment to building a city where we actually aren't dependent on, like, our budget isn't dependent on them, and our sense of public safety is not dependent on the Chicago Police Department, but it's actually dependent on our communities and everyday people. And that can happen today. By the Fraternal Order of Police making that type of commitment. It can happen by the next mayor of Chicago making that commitment, and all the aldermen, whether they're elected or not reelected in upcoming elections, making that commitment.
Charlene, I can't imagine the police department would go for having cuts in their budget when they're trying to secure the city. I don't see any department ever asking for cuts in there to protect their civilians.
Oh, and the reality of it is that we experience violence in our neighborhoods in Chicago and black and brown neighborhoods every single day. With our police force is tied for the second largest police force in the United States of America. And the amount of police officers has steadily increased over the years, but safety in black and brown communities that have been economically divested from has not increased. And so we have to say, why do we continue to try the same thing over and over again and it doesn't actually work? Doing something over and over again that doesn't work has been coined insanity. And I think it's beyond unconscionable, and it's absolutely absurd that we think that the solution to creating safety in our communities is more policing when we've seen over and over again that it hasn't worked. We know that people being gainfully employed reduces violence in our communities. We know that people having access to education in our communities reduces violence. So why aren't we putting more investments in that and continuing to escalate our investments in policing? That's a failed strategy. We need to invest in our people.
Charlene Carruthers, we're grateful you could join us. We know the conversation will continue. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Activists on Jason Van Dyke's sentence in LAQUAN McDonald's murder, slap in the face. You know I'm going to say that again. Activists on Jason Van Dyke's sentence in LAQUAN McDonald's murder, slap in the face. This was done in the Huffington Post, January the 19th, 2019, and this is how it reads. After an Illinois judge sentenced former police officer Jason Van Dyke to just over 6 years in prison for the 2014 murder of teenager LAQUAN McDonald, some community residents are calling it a slap in the face. Cook County Judge Vincent Gaughan sentenced the ex-officer on Friday to nearly 7 years in prison. He was convicted last year of second-degree murder and 16 counts of aggravated battery with a firearm, one for every bullet he fired at 17-year-old McDonald. Friday's announcement means Van Dyke could be released on good behavior in less than 3.5 years, the Associated Press reported. Prosecutors wanted Van Dyke to serve at least 18 years in prison. His attorney sought for him to be released on probation. William Calloway, a Chicago community organizer, told reporters on Friday that he and fellow community members were devastated after learning about Van Dyke's sentencing. The activist was instrumental in helping to release the police dash cam video in 2015 that showed the white officer shooting the black teenager 16 times, including after McDonald was on the ground. He deserves to spend the rest of his life behind bars, he said. That's something that a consensus among the activist community, the black community, and most Chicagoans at large. He added that Van Dyke's sentence of 81 months is a slap in the face to the community that has protested McDonald's killing, and a slap on the wrist for Van Dyke, he continued. Reverend Marvin Hunter, McDonald's great-uncle, said the sentence reduced McDonald's life to a second-class citizen status, the AP reported. He also told reporters on Friday that Van Dyke's sentence was a victory in that it sent a message to unjust police officers that they can serve time in prison for breaking law, but it's a sad day for America and the American justice system, according to video by the Chicago Sun-Times. On Thursday, Cook County Associated Judge Dominica Stevenson acquitted 3 Chicago police officers, Tom Gaffney, Joseph Walsh, and David March, who were convicted or accused of trying to cover up the 2014 shooting. Hey, welcome to the Mr. Blows Your Mind shows of Black Minds TV. I'm your host, Mr. Blows Your Mind, and this show is to relate, decode, unveil, spread the news, whether by website, video, or quotes from publications. As I articulate these information, I accept the Creator universe be here, heart, mind, soul, and spirit. Because why? The Creator doesn't need no partner. And you know what my motto is? I'm never going to tell you what I heard. I'm only going to tell you what I know. All right, y'all. So we have the case here that the Jason Van Dyke, for those who have watched my show, you know that we covered that extensively when nobody else was covering it. And we had the verdict of the day when they gave the announcement of the sentence, or the accusation that got him, convicted, right? And so after all that time and that whole hoopla, to bring it down to what came down just Friday as to what the sentences would be for Jason Van Dyke, 6 years, 9 months. Think about that. 6 years, 9 months, and the high probability of only doing 3.5 years. Really not even 3.5 years when you think about it, because again, it said that he had a mandatory 2 years release, probationary. So he's only going to do 1.5 years. Think about this. The case originally was done in 2014 when LAQUAN McDonald was shot and killed. 2015, the videotape, the activist, what's the brother's name? The brother's name is William Calloway, who was the one that fought with, I thought they also talk about another journalist, that both of them got the FOI, the Freedom of Information. They had to go through courts to get that so they could be released. It got to the public, and then that's when the attention came, right? And once everybody seen, it was able to see what transpired and not what had been told. And there was a lot of people in the official capacity who did not uphold what they swore, that's according to the oath that they take. And so what ended up happening was this became permeated in the minds of the Chicagoans, and then as the time went on in the case, eventually, came to fruition. They got the verdict. So here was the sentences or sentencing, and to go after that young man accordingly. Now again, just because somebody is, again, that's at the age of 17 years old, you make mistakes. But you're allowed to make mistakes so that you recover. That's why you become adult and you get wisdom. Now I know some people will say, due to the simple fact that they had the stigmatization on young black men. But again, if you come out of the environments, you come out of the conditions, you coming out of the historical aspect that we as black people in this country have, well, a lot of white people or Caucasian people, European people may not agree, because again, you don't walk in the shoes that we walk in. You don't live in the environments that we live in that were designed for us to live, and again, you don't live under economic pressures of not having or being lack of adequate of whether it be serviceable employment, services, period, right? So sometimes the crumbs that are left, that what the environment has to try to thrive on, breathe a kind of a atmosphere of dog eat dog. And so a lot of people will use that in the mantra of Chicago and talk about the crime and the hyper, I guess you want to say the killings of gun shootings, right? But does that equate that a young man that maybe, again, there was a call that had been made as into somebody was breaking into cars? Again, remember, that was originally what that was about. And yet, after all that had been said, I heard nothing in the story that pertained to anything about radios or whatever had supposed to have been stolen, right? We heard that a call went in and the individual supposedly, but again, there was nothing that was ever apprehended that had anything to do with anything about breaking in cars. So I have to question that as well. But again, as you've seen the videotape, when you see the young man, again, they do show that there could have been something in his hand. It could have been a knife. But if you see the direction that the young man, after you see that the car that Jason Van Dyke and his partner is in, originally they pulled up, they kind of want to jump out right there. You see Jason Van Dyke's door open. But because of the position, there was already another car there. They decided to go further up and then get out. So at this time, LAQUAN McDonald was walking. Now, as he sees them out and their guns are already drawn, right? The guns are drawn. He's walking on an angle that would be away from them. He's not coming towards them. And so when the story had broke, it said that the young man lunged at Jason Van Dyke, and that allowed him to justify to protect himself, right? But once the videotape came out and once everybody seen it, the outcry of injustice was on the city, and it put the pressure on the officials. There was an upcoming election for that year as well. So who got held the bag looked like it was the McCarthy, who was the superintendent at the time. And so what ended up happening was he got fired. Actually, he's actually trying to run now, using that as part of his campaign, right? But again, Rahm Emanuel was not even running. And so, with that being said, a lot of people were at fault because there was a lot of people who knew what really took place. Then to have the three officers who were there was actually a fourth one. It was actually a female. I think she's a Puerto Rican maybe. Her testimony was in difference to what they had testified. Now those three also being Caucasian men. And the day before this sentencing, those three men were acquitted of the charges. Yet it is unequivocally, without a doubt, they fabricated their stories. but yet they said that based on their perspective, they were entitled to write what they wanted. Right? See, but again, when we talk about justice in this country, and everybody wants to think that when black people talk about there's a black system and there's a white system. And when white people don't want to adhere to that, to say that you're whining and crying and bickering as if you don't see it, but if it was on the shoe was on the other foot, the cry would be so loud to the fact that, again, history has already told us that you'll take justice and mob action in your own hand. So when those who are the disenfranchised and the trodden down rely upon the system finds a way to constantly keep kicking you and beating you in the gut, in your face, as if like we did something, again, just to quail you down. But when we really look at what took place here, to give this man 6 years and 9 months, a mandatory 2 years probation. So when you do the calculation of 81 months for 16 bullets, that means he's only getting about 5 months, barely 5 months per shot, which was an overkill. 7 months lenience. He got way more lenience than he did anything as to being prosecuted for the crime that he was guilty of. To get a year and a half and 2 years probation is worse than a slap in the face. As the LAQUAN McDonald's uncle, the pastor, has stated, as a second-class citizen. Well, it's just really the fact that you've never been a citizen in this land anyway, regardless to what they may say, regardless to how the mantra may be and the people believe in, but the justice system constantly keeps showing us who time and time again as to what our place really is in this land. And so, again, how can a community or community of African Americans or black Americans have trust in a system and those who are supposed to adhere to administer it have a good public relation? When the justice, when it's upon ourselves, you will hold us to every letter of the law. But those who are supposed to uphold and take oath to it, there's always leniency and leniency and leniency. No one wants to see anybody put in jail for anything they didn't do. But again, according to this system here, we have, especially in this particular city and state, they had to stop the death penalty because so many men will come to find out they had to be exonerated because, again, falsifying to get convictions. So you see that Mr. Calloway, as you see in the picture there, he's crying. The hard work that he put in to finally get it to the place to get it, and then to undermine all that work, and then have the judge say the things that he said in the courtroom, talking about somebody's family. Well, this one eventually get a chance to go back to his. But LAQUAN McDonald will never get a chance to go back to his. And I guess in that case, I guess it's even, right? His life was only equivalent to a year and a half in jail. Because really, when you think about it, he had already got 5 years, right? Think about it. It was 2014 from the time that it happened. You just now getting the case of 2019 of January. That's 5 years. So then he's only going to do another. So he has more time that he was not to be serving than he's going to serve. And you say everything is justice, and justice is not blind. This is Mr. Blows Your Minds coming with another thought-provoking topic. Again, you know, it is what it is, right? And again, the trust value between them and us, I don't think you can ever have that to a point that's going to be healing. Regardless to what they say, regardless to what they do, time and time again, it's the same old song, the same old game.
Portions of the following program may be unsuitable for younger or more sensitive viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
Remember, the enemy has only images and illusions, behind which he hides his true motives. Destroy the image, and you will break the enemy.
I'm here to tell you tonight that the businessmen, the mayor of this city, the police commissioner of this city, and everybody in the white power structure of this city must take a responsibility for everything.
Luther and I and everyone in this arena tonight are unified by the same great American values. We're proud of our country. We respect our flag. Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, get that son of off the field right now, out, he's fired. He's fired!
Race is when you use your power and influence to subject people into inferiority. Utterances can't be racist.
Look around you, man. They own this shit. They own this couch you sitting on, them shoes you got on your feet, this building, this school, this country, you. We're behind enemy lines, dog.
So you must first of all remember that this system was not originally designed. Prepared for black people to in the end begin to demand their rights and an equal share in this country which they died for. Hey, and we definitely are not going back to Africa.
In the church, we used to sing the song, "Good News, the chariot is coming." While you sit here today, knowing that you have come to hear good news, you must realize in advance what good news for you might be bad news for somebody else. Right? What good news for the sheep might be bad news.
For you. In 1849, it was hitting blacks on the head 100 times a day. In 1990, they hit them 48 times a day. Isn't it better? Oh, it's got to be better. You're saying 52 blows.
The only purpose of most black Americans on earth today is to destroy.
I think that's noble. Italians love Italians. When Irish love Irish. But when a nigga loves a nigga, it's an unpardonable sin. They have blood in their hands. When we say they have blood in their hands, we are not saying him, George Bezos, went and killed. But white people colonized us. They dispersed us. They enslaved our people. They sucked our economy dry. They are still sucking it dry even today. That's white people. Tony Blair, George Bush, Napoleon Bonaparte, Leopold, Adolf Hitler, Benjamin Netanyahu, all white people, they are the same. They are racist and they are full of hate.
I've been waiting for you. You have many questions, and though the process has altered your consciousness, you remain irrevocably human. Ergo, some of my answers you will understand, and some of them you will not. Concordantly, while your first question may be the most pertinent, you may or may not realize it is also the most irrelevant.
Why am I here?
Our world is coming crumbling down. The coons are coming.
You have to understand that white America has an uncanny way of making the victim the victimizer. Excuse me, master, for putting my head in the way of your club. Not that your club is brutalizing my head and putting hickeys on it. My head got in the way of your free swing and broke your shiny stick, and I want to apologize for that.
Your life is the sum of a remainder of an unbalanced equation inherent to the programming of the Matrix. You are the eventuality of an anomaly which, despite my sincerest efforts, I have been unable to eliminate from what is otherwise a harmony of mathematical precision. While it remains a burden assiduously avoided, it is not unexpected and thus not beyond a measure of control, which has led you inexorably here.
There are more connections in the human body than there are stars in the galaxy. We possess a gigantic network of information to which we have almost no access.
Matrix is older than you know. I prefer counting from the emergence of one integral anomaly to the emergence of the next, in which case this is the 6th version.
5 months before. There are only 2 possible explanations. 5 months before. Either no one told me, or no one knows.
Precisely. As you are undoubtedly gathering, the anomaly is systemic, creating fluctuations in even the most simplistic equations.
Control me! I'm gonna smash you to bits! You can't make me do anything like my trick!
Choice. The problem is choice.
Let us remember that we are not brutalized because we're Baptist. We're not brutalized because we're Methodist. We're not brutalized because we're Muslim. We're not brutalized because we're Catholics. We're brutalized because we are black people in America.
Because white people made him to be what he is. They made him to look evil, because that's their role, to make all of us black people to look evil and to hate ourselves. I can't hate
you. You're a nigga till you die. If you're a poor nigga, you're a poor nigga. If you're a rich nigga, you're a rich nigga. But you never stop being a nigga. And if you get to be educated, you're just an educated nigga.
I'm told every day I'm on air that I'm racist because I call out racism. That is maddening to me, and I'm crying about it because it's crazy.
So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is teaching you and I and trying to tell the white man to get this powder keg out of his house. Let the black man separate from his house. Own house. Let the black man have his own land and his own property.
I thought the bitch was white! Damn it! I thought the bitch was white!
That's true. I think that white people are so guilty, knowing what they've done to black people, that they feel if the deeds were reversed, they would hate the black man if he had done the same thing to them. So it's actually, it reflects a guilt complex on the part of whites when they ask us, do we hate them? And if you notice, Uncle Sam has formed a habit of going all over the world. He calls it the ugly American, or the American image. He thinks that everybody hates him because it's a guilt complex. And if you think that if you are worried about Europeans hating you, and they're your allies and your cousins, well, naturally it would follow for you to think that Negroes in this country would hate you, especially in light of what has been done to black people in this country by white people.
Now check it out. The white ball dominates everything, right? Knocks the shit out the yellow ball, the red ball, right? And the game's over when the white ball drives the black ball completely off the table.
But you have to see that all of this is hypocrisy.
I love Malcolm. Malcolm called me the Sunday that he died. I was working Basin Street East. He said, Brother Greg, you coming by today? And I said, Malcolm, I love you. And I said, I love you so much, I don't even want to take a chance to be there. He said, what do you mean, Brother Greg? I said, well, I close tonight, Sunday night at Basin Street East. And I said, but I had my wife book me a flight into Chicago at 8 o'clock this morning. And I'm going to Chicago, and I had way beneath my salary booked me into a college about 10 miles from the airport. And I'm going to go there and speak this afternoon, and I'm going to stay there until they tell me you dead. Because I'm not going to let this government get two of us for the price of one. And I'm going to call Adam Clayton Powell when I finish talking to you and beg him not to come there. Because today, the United States government is going to get you.